The crystal champagne flute slipped from Eliza Morgan's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom. The sound, sharp and final, cut through the ambient chatter of Manhattan's elite like a scream. A hush fell over the crowd as 300 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Eliza stood frozen in her midnight blue gown, a custom Vera Wang that had cost more than her first car. Time seemed to slow as she stared at her husband of 12 years, Daniel Morgan, locked in an intimate embrace with Vanessa Reynolds, her supposed friend and his executive assistant. They hadn't even noticed her presence yet. Too absorbed in their own whispered conversation, his hand possessively resting on the small of Vanessa's back. "I've always loved you," Daniel murmured, just loud enough for Eliza to hear. "You know that, don't you?" The charity gala, an event Eliza had spent 6 months organizing to benefit children's cancer research, swirled around her in a blur of black ties and evening gowns. The auction items she'd personally secured, the celebrity appearances she'd arranged, the $500,000 already raised tonight, none of it mattered anymore. Her carefully constructed life was shattering as publicly as that champagne flute. Someone touched her elbow. "Are you all right, dear?" The concerned voice belonged to Margaret Wilton, wife of a hedge fund manager and notorious gossip. Eliza couldn't breathe, her chest constricted as though invisible hands were squeezing her lungs. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now, not in front of everyone who mattered in their social circle. Her husband finally looked up, his eyes widening as they met hers. She recognized the expression immediately. Not guilt, but annoyance at being caught. "Eliza," Daniel said smoothly, straightening his custom tuxedo, "I was just discussing the Reynolds Foundation donation with Vanessa." Vanessa had the decency to look uncomfortable, but the victorious glint in her eyes told Eliza everything she needed to know. This wasn't a momentary indiscretion. This was a coup. Before Eliza could respond, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "Interesting fundraising technique, Daniel. I don't recall it being covered in Harvard Business School." Every head turned toward the source of the voice, an imposing figure standing at the entrance to the ballroom. Even from a distance, his presence was magnetic, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Sebastian Blackwood, billionaire investor, philanthropist, and Eliza's godfather, had arrived. And in that moment, with Sebastian's unexpected appearance, Eliza felt the ground shift beneath her feet. This humiliation would not be the end of her story, but rather, the beginning. 6 months earlier. Eliza Morgan carefully arranged the fresh peonies in the crystal vase, positioning them at the center of the 12-person dining table. The morning. Light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Upper East Side penthouse, illuminating the meticulous preparations for tonight's dinner party. Daniel's law partners and their spouses would be arriving at 7, and everything needed to be perfect. At 41, Eliza had mastered the art of being the ideal corporate wife. Her chestnut hair was expertly highlighted and cut into a sophisticated bob that framed her heart-shaped face. Years of Pilates and careful eating maintained her slender figure, while her wardrobe of designer classics ensured she always looked elegant but never flashy. The daughter of old money that had mostly dried up by the time she reached adulthood, Eliza had been raised to be accomplished but not ambitious, the perfect complement to a rising star like Daniel. They'd met at Columbia, where she studied art history and he pursued law. Daniel had been dazzling even then, brilliant, driven, and charismatic, with dark hair and the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. When he proposed during their graduation weekend, Eliza had felt like the luckiest woman alive. 12 years later, their life together resembled a glossy magazine spread. The penthouse with views of Central Park, summers in the Hamptons, winters in Aspen, memberships to the right clubs, donations to the right charities. Daniel had made partner at Goldman, Morris & Stein 5 years ago, specializing in mergers and acquisitions for Fortune 500 companies. Eliza managed their social calendar, sat on charity boards, and maintained their image as the perfect power couple. If sometimes she felt more like a prop than a partner, she pushed those thoughts aside. This was the life she'd chosen. The intercom buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. "Mrs. Morgan, there's a package for you," announced Roberto, their building's doorman. Moments later, Eliza was signing for a sleek black box tied with a single silver ribbon. There was no card, no indication of who had sent it. Curious, she carried it to the kitchen island and carefully untied the ribbon. Inside lay a vintage photograph in a simple silver frame. The image showed a much younger version of herself, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, sitting on the knee of a distinguished-looking man with kind eyes and salt-and-pepper hair. Sebastian Blackwood, her godfather. Eliza's throat tightened with emotion. She hadn't seen Sebastian in almost 20 years, not since her parents' funeral. As her father's closest friend from their university days, Sebastian had been a constant presence in her childhood, bringing exotic gifts from his travels, telling her stories of faraway places, encouraging her dreams of becoming an artist. But after her parents died in a sailing accident off the coast of Maine, Sebastian had gradually disappeared from her life. There had been a trust fund for her education, managed by his firm, but the man himself had become a distant memory. She'd heard about him over the years, of course, his name occasionally appearing in the financial pages or mentioned at charity events. Sebastian Blackwood had transformed from a successful investment banker into a billionaire with interests in technology, renewable energy, and biotech. Beneath the framed photo lay a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. My dearest Eliza, time has a way of slipping through our fingers. I've been abroad for too long, focused on building empires instead of maintaining connections that truly matter. I'm back in New York now and would be honored if you would join me for lunch this Friday at 11 Madison Park, 1 p.m. There are things we should discuss. With affection, Sebastian. Eliza ran her finger over the elegant signature, memories flooding back. Sebastian teaching her to play chess in her father's study. Sebastian applauding wildly at her first piano recital. Sebastian comforting her at the funeral, promising to always look out for her. What could he possibly want after all these years? Her phone chimed with a text from Daniel. Meeting running late. Don't wait up. The third such message this week. Eliza set down her phone with a sigh, her gaze returning to the photograph. Perhaps this unexpected blast from the past was exactly what she needed. When Eliza arrived at 11 Madison Park that Friday, Sebastian was already waiting. Despite being in his late 60s, he cut an impressive figure, tall and distinguished in a bespoke charcoal suit, his silver hair impeccably styled, his posture straight as a soldier's. When he saw her, his face broke into a warm smile that transported her back to childhood. Eliza, he said, rising to embrace her. You're even more beautiful than I remembered. The lunch was initially filled with catching up, Sebastian asking about her life, seeming genuinely interested in even the most mundane details. He was an attentive listener. His gray eyes focused entirely on her as she spoke. When she mentioned Daniel, something flickered across Sebastian's face, but it was gone so quickly she couldn't identify the emotion. And what about your art? Sebastian asked, sipping his wine. Your father always said you had extraordinary talent. Eliza felt a pang of regret. Oh, I haven't picked up a brush in years. Just sketching occasionally. Life got busy. You know how it is. Too busy for passion? Sebastian's question was gentle but direct. Before she could formulate a response, that wouldn't sound like an excuse. Sebastian shifted topics. I've been following your charity work. The Children's Hospital Gala last year was quite successful, I heard. Yes, we raised over $2 million. Eliza felt a flush of pride. The event had been entirely her vision. From theme to execution, I'd like to make a significant contribution to your next project. Sebastian said, his tone casual but his eyes intent. Whatever it is, consider me your primary backer. Eliza nearly choked on her water. That's incredibly generous, but why? Sebastian set down his fork, his expression turning serious. Your parents were the best friends I ever had, Eliza. Richard saved my life once, did you know that? We were hiking in Switzerland and I slipped on an icy ledge. He pulled me back from a 1,000-foot drop without a second thought. He paused, his gaze distant with memory. I should have been there for you after they died. Instead, I buried myself in work, in building Blackwood Enterprises. It's my greatest regret. You provided for my education, Eliza offered. Money, Sebastian dismissed with a wave. The least I could do and the easiest. But I should have been present. He reached across the table to cover her hand with his. I'd like to make up for lost time if you'll allow it. Something in his tone made Eliza pause. Is everything all right, Sebastian? You're not ill, are you? He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. No, nothing like that. Let's just say I've reached a point in life where I'm reevaluating what matters. Family matters, Eliza. You're the closest thing to family I have left. As they parted ways after lunch, Sebastian handed her a small velvet box. A little homecoming gift, he said. Inside was an exquisite Art Deco pendant, an emerald surrounded by diamonds on a platinum chain. It was your mother's, Sebastian explained. She left it with me before that final trip, said the clasp needed fixing. I've kept it safe all these years. Eliza felt tears welling up. Thank you, she whispered, suddenly overwhelmed by memories of her mother wearing this very necklace at special occasions. Sebastian kissed her cheek. I'll be in touch about your charity project. And Eliza? His expression turned serious again. Remember who you are. A Morgan by marriage, but a Harrington by blood. Your mother and father were fighters. Don't ever forget that. As she watched his car pull away, Eliza felt strangely unsettled by his parting words. What had he meant? In the weeks that followed, Eliza found herself drawn back into Sebastian's orbit. He invited her to gallery openings, introduced her to artists he supported, took genuine interest in her opinions on the works they viewed. For the first time in years, Eliza felt intellectually stimulated, valued for more than her social skills and appearance. Meanwhile, things with Daniel grew increasingly strained. He was rarely home before midnight, his explanations vague, his attention perpetually divided between his phone and his laptop even when physically present. When Eliza mentioned Sebastian's return to her life, Daniel's reaction was unexpectedly hostile. Blackwood? The venture capital guy? Daniel's expression darkened. I've heard stories about his business practices. Ruthless doesn't begin to cover it. Why is he suddenly interested in playing Godfather after all these years? He feels guilty about losing touch, Eliza explained, surprised by Daniel's vehemence. Just be careful, Daniel warned. Men like that always have angles. It was the most engaged Daniel had been in a conversation with her in months, which only heightened Eliza's suspicion that something was seriously wrong in their marriage. The following Tuesday, Daniel's credit card statement arrived while he was at work. Eliza normally handled their household finances, so she opened it without thinking twice. Among the usual charges for client dinners and golf outings was a $12,500 purchase from Tiffany & Co., dated 3 weeks earlier, 2 days before their anniversary, which Daniel had forgotten completely. Heart-pounding, Eliza called the store. With her most authoritative voice, she explained that she was Mrs. Daniel Morgan and needed to check whether a recently purchased item required sizing. Oh, yes. Mrs. Morgan, the sales associate said brightly. The diamond bracelet. Your husband mentioned it was a gift. Would you like to bring it in for adjustment? Eliza's hands trembled as she ended the call. The bracelet wasn't for her. She'd received nothing from Daniel on their anniversary except a hasty text apologizing for working late. That evening, she waited until after dinner to confront him. Who did you buy the bracelet for, Daniel? He froze momentarily, then recovered with practiced ease. What bracelet? The one from Tiffany's. $12,000. Daniel's expression hardened. You're spying on me now? I pay the bills, Daniel. I always have. Eliza fought to keep her voice steady. Who is she? For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face. Then his expression closed off completely. It's not what you think. It was for a client's wife, part of closing the Reynolds deal. The firm reimbursed me. The explanation sounded rehearsed, but Eliza desperately wanted to believe him. The Reynolds deal? As in James Reynolds, the tech CEO? Yes, Daniel said, relaxing slightly. James appreciates personal touches. It's business, Eliza. Nothing more. Later that night, unable to sleep, Eliza checked Daniel's email on their shared iPad. There was nothing suspicious in his work account. But when she tried opening his personal Gmail, she discovered he'd changed the password. The following day, she hired a private investigator. 1 week later, she had her answer. Daniel was having an affair with his new executive assistant, Vanessa Reynolds, wife of James Reynolds, the very client he'd claimed the bracelet was for. The irony was almost too perfect. He's sleeping with both of them, the investigator explained, showing Eliza surveillance photos. The assistant and the client's wife. They're sisters. Eliza stared at the images, feeling strangely numb. Daniel entering a boutique hotel with a striking blonde. The same woman, Vanessa, meeting James Reynolds for lunch, kissing him hello with familiar affection. Daniel and Vanessa working late in his office, their body language intimate. The Reynolds sisters come from nothing, the investigator continued. Vanessa married the tech mogul 3 years ago. Her sister Valerie was hired as Daniel's executive assistant 4 months ago, apparently on Vanessa's recommendation. From what I can gather, Daniel's been sleeping with Vanessa for at least 2 years. The sister is a newer development. 2 years. Eliza's mind reeled. That predated Vanessa's employment at the firm, which meant Daniel had been involved with a client's wife even before she became professionally connected to him. There's more, the investigator said gently. The firm is being positioned for a merger with Reynolds' legal department. Daniel is set to head the new combined entity. The announcement is expected after the Children's Cancer Charity Gala. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Daniel's late nights. His sudden interest in tech law. The Reynolds family's unexpected donation to her charity event. It wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated career move with Eliza as an unwitting pawn. When the investigator left, Eliza sat alone in her living room, the manila envelope of evidence on the coffee table before her. She should feel devastated, heartbroken, betrayed. Instead, she felt something unexpected, relief. The uncertainty was over. The pretense could end. Her phone chimed with a text from Sebastian. Are we still on for the gallery opening tomorrow? There's someone I'd like you to meet. Eliza stared at the message, an idea forming in her mind. She hadn't told Sebastian about her suspicions regarding Daniel, but perhaps it was time to confide in someone who truly cared about her welfare. Someone with the power and connections to help her navigate what came next. Yes, she replied. And afterward, I could use your advice on something important. The gallery opening was in Tribeca, showcasing emerging artists from around the world. Sebastian introduced Eliza to Abigail Chen, a formidable art dealer with close ties to major museums and collectors. Eliza has an exceptional eye, Sebastian told Abigail. She studied art history at Columbia before life took her in a different direction. Abigail regarded Eliza with newfound interest. We're always looking for fresh perspectives at the gallery. Perhaps you'd consider consulting on our next exhibition? Before Eliza could respond that she wasn't qualified, Sebastian interjected. She'd be delighted. Eliza's been wanting to reconnect with the art world, haven't you? The look he gave her was so full of confidence in her abilities that Eliza found herself nodding. I'd love to, she heard herself say. After Abigail moved on to greet other guests, Eliza turned to Sebastian. Why did you do that? I haven't worked in years. I'm hardly qualified to consult on a major exhibition. Sebastian's expression was serious. Because it's time you remembered who you are beyond being Daniel Morgan's wife. The statement hit Eliza like a physical blow. How had Sebastian seen so clearly what she herself had been unwilling to acknowledge? that somewhere along the way she'd lost herself in the performance of being the perfect spouse. Later, over drinks at a quiet bar, Eliza finally told Sebastian everything: the credit card statement, the investigation, the photos, the planned merger with Reynolds' company. Sebastian listened without interruption, his expression darkening with each new detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. "Divorce him, obviously," Eliza said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "But I need to be strategic. Daniel has always controlled our finances. The prenup limits what I'd receive if I'm the one filing, especially without documented abuse." Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. "And the charity gala? It's in 2 weeks, correct?" "Yes. Everything's arranged, tickets sold, donations secured." Eliza sighed. "It will raise millions for pediatric cancer research. I can't abandon it now, no matter what's happening with Daniel." "Nor should you," Sebastian agreed. "In fact, I think the gala presents a unique opportunity." There was something in his tone that made Eliza look up sharply. "What do you mean?" Sebastian leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "Daniel and the Reynolds family are planning to use your event, the culmination of your hard work, as the backdrop for announcing their professional merger. A merger built on deceit and infidelity." Eliza felt sick at the thought. "You think they'd really do that?" "I know they would. James Reynolds has been trying to acquire legal representation within his corporate structure for years. This merger with your husband's firm is his golden ticket. Goldman, Morris, and Stein handling his legal affairs exclusively while he maintains control." Sebastian's mouth tightened. "Reynolds is not known for his ethics, Eliza. Neither is your husband, apparently. So, what's this opportunity you mentioned?" Sebastian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What would you say if I told you I could help you secure what you deserve while ensuring Daniel and the Reynolds family face consequences for their actions?" A chill ran down Eliza's spine. "I'm listening." Reynolds Technology is on the verge of a major public offering. Their valuation depends entirely on the merger, with Daniel's firm going through smoothly. If that deal were to falter, or better yet, implode spectacularly, Reynolds would lose hundreds of millions. Eliza frowned. "And how exactly would that help me?" "Because I've been watching Reynolds for years, waiting for the right moment to acquire his company. His technology is brilliant, but the man himself is reckless. When his stock plummets, I'll be there to pick up the pieces." Sebastian paused. "And Daniel's career will suffer a setback from which it might never recover." "You want revenge on Reynolds," Eliza realized. "This isn't just about helping me." Sebastian didn't deny it. "James Reynolds stole proprietary technology from one of my portfolio companies 5 years ago. The legal battle dragged on until my company went bankrupt fighting him. 30 people lost their jobs. A brilliant innovator took his own life." His expression was grim. "So yes, I want justice. But that doesn't mean I can't help you obtain it for yourself as well." Eliza considered his words carefully. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Attend your gala as planned. Be the perfect hostess. Let Daniel think everything is normal." Sebastian's eyes gleamed. "Meanwhile, I'll ensure certain information reaches the right people at the right time. When the dust settles, you'll file for divorce with Daniel's infidelity publicly established, nullifying the limitations in your prenup. And Reynolds will be in no position to complete his merger or his public offering." Sebastian reached across the table to take her hand. "You won't have to do anything except be present when it all unfolds. Eliza, I promise you that." Part of Eliza knew she should refuse, that whatever Sebastian was planning crossed ethical lines she'd never imagined herself approaching. But another part, a stronger part, remembered Daniel's casual cruelty, his betrayal, his willingness to use her charity event as a backdrop for his own ambitions. "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'm in." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of final preparations for the gala. Eliza maintained a perfect facade, playing the role of devoted wife with an Oscar-worthy performance. Daniel, preoccupied with the upcoming merger announcement, barely seemed to notice the subtle change in her demeanor. The night before the gala, Daniel informed her that he'd invited the Reynolds family to sit at their table, James has been incredibly generous with his donation, he explained. And his wife Vanessa has expressed interest in joining the foundation board. Eliza smiled thinly. How thoughtful of her. Daniel paused, studying her expression. Is everything all right? You've seemed distant lately. Just stressed about tomorrow, Eliza lied smoothly. You know how important this event is to me. Daniel nodded, clearly relieved to avoid a deeper conversation. You've outdone yourself with the planning. Everyone's talking about it. If only you knew, Eliza thought, maintaining her smile. That night, as Daniel slept beside her, Eliza received a text from Sebastian. Everything is arranged. Just be ready. Eliza stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. I trust you. As she set down her phone, she realized it was true. Despite the years of absence, despite the mysterious circumstances of his return, she did trust Sebastian Blackwood. More than she'd ever trusted her own husband. Tomorrow would change everything. She just had to be brave enough to face what came next. The Grand Meridian Ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of Manhattan's elite. Eliza moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting compliments on the event, thanking donors, ensuring everything ran smoothly. The auction had already raised record amounts, and the evening was only half over. Sebastian had arrived early, commanding attention in his bespoke tuxedo. He'd donated a staggering $5 million, instantly becoming the event's primary benefactor. The hospital board members had flocked to him, eager to secure his future support. Daniel had been watching Sebastian with barely concealed suspicion all evening. Since when are you and Blackwood so close? He'd demanded as they'd greeted guests at the entrance. He was my father's best friend, Eliza had reminded him. And now he's our most generous donor. I suggest you be nice. From across the room, Eliza spotted Vanessa Reynolds arriving with her husband James. Vanessa was stunning in a red gown that accentuated her perfect figure, her blonde hair styled in elegant waves. James, shorter than his wife and at least 15 years older, looked uncomfortable in his tuxedo, despite its perfect tailoring. Daniel immediately excused himself from a conversation with hospital board members to greet them. Eliza watched as he embraced Vanessa, the touch lingering just a fraction too long to be proper. James didn't seem to notice, already heading for the bar. Eliza felt Sebastian's presence before she saw him. Are you ready? He murmured, appearing at her side. As I'll ever be, she replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Sebastian nodded toward the stage. The foundation director is about to make the funding announcement. After that, Daniel and Reynolds will likely make their move to announce the merger. That's when it happens. When what happens? Sebastian's smile was enigmatic. Justice. The foundation director, Dr. Helen Zhang, took the stage to enthusiastic applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to announce that tonight's event has raised over $12 million for pediatric cancer research, a new record. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Dr. Zhang continued, This incredible achievement would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of our event chair, Eliza Morgan, and the extraordinary generosity of our primary benefactor, Sebastian Blackwood. More applause as Dr. Zhang gestured for Eliza to join her on stage. Eliza made her way forward, accepting the microphone with a gracious smile. Thank you, Dr. Zhang, and thank you all for your remarkable generosity tonight. As many of you know, this cause is deeply personal to me. My cousin Emma lost her battle with leukemia when she was just 9 years old. Eliza paused, genuinely emotional. The research funded by events like this ensures that other children have better outcomes. Better treatments, better chances. As she spoke, she noticed Daniel and James Reynolds having an intense conversation near the stage, Vanessa hovering nearby. They were preparing for their announcement, just as Sebastian had predicted. Eliza handed the microphone back to Dr. Zhang and descended from the stage. As she moved through the crowd accepting congratulations, she felt oddly calm. Whatever was about to happen, she was ready. She approached the bar for a glass of champagne, and that's when she overheard Daniel and Vanessa. I've always loved you, Daniel murmured to Vanessa.
You know that, don't you?
The crystal flute slipped from Eliza's fingers, shattering on the marble floor. And then Sebastian was there, his commanding voice cutting through the tension with perfect timing. Interesting fundraising technique, Daniel. I don't recall it being covered in Harvard Business School. The room fell silent as Sebastian approached. He moved with the confident grace of a man accustomed to commanding attention, stopping directly in front of Daniel and Vanessa. Mr. Blackwood, Daniel said stiffly, this is a private conversation. In the middle of a charity gala? Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Curious definition of private. But then, discretion has never been your strong suit, has it, Daniel? James Reynolds pushed through the crowd to join them, his face flushed. What's going on here? Sebastian turned to him with a cold smile. Mr. Reynolds, perfect timing. I believe your wife and Mr. Morgan were just discussing their long-standing affair. 2 years, is it now? The color drained from James Reynolds' face. What did you say? Vanessa stepped forward. James, he's lying. Daniel and I work together, that's all. Is that why Daniel bought you a $12,000 diamond bracelet from Tiffany's? Eliza asked, her voice stronger than she expected. Or why you meet him at the Greenwich Hotel every Tuesday afternoon? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Margaret Wilton was already typing furiously on her phone, no doubt blasting the unfolding drama to her extensive social network. Daniel's face contorted with rage. You had me followed? What kind of wife? The kind who deserves better than a husband who uses her charity event to announce a business merger built on infidelity, Eliza cut him off. Sebastian addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this unfortunate display. However, since we're all here witnessing this revelation, you should know the full story. He turned to James Reynolds. Your wife has been sleeping with Daniel Morgan since before she arranged for her sister to be hired as his executive assistant. A sister who is also intimately involved with Mr. Morgan. James Reynolds lunged at Daniel, who barely dodged the punch. Security guards moved swiftly to intervene. That's a damn lie. Vanessa shouted, but her panicked expression suggested otherwise. Sebastian continued calmly. The merger you plan to announce tonight between Reynolds Technology and Goldman, Morrison Stein was predicated on this arrangement. A merger that would have massively inflated your company's valuation before its public offering next month. The crowd was completely silent now, everyone riveted by the drama unfolding before them. You can't prove any of this, Daniel snarled. Actually, he can, came a new voice. A slender woman in a conservative black dress stepped forward, Valerie Reynolds, Vanessa's sister and Daniel's executive assistant. I have emails, texts, recordings. Daniel promised me the same things he promised my sister. A future, a position in the new company, love. Her voice cracked on the last word. It was all lies. Vanessa stared at her sister in shock. Val, what are you doing? What I should have done months ago. Valerie turned to Eliza. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan. I truly am. James Reynolds was being physically restrained by security guards now, his face purple with rage. You're finished, Morgan. Both of you! He shouted at Daniel and Vanessa. Eliza felt strangely detached from the chaos, as though watching it unfold from a distance. She turned to Sebastian, who was observing the scene with satisfaction. Did you arrange for Valerie to be here? She asked quietly. Sebastian's eyes met hers. I merely suggested she might want to attend an event where her boss and sister would be present. The decision to speak up was entirely hers. Daniel broke free from the security guards holding him back and strode toward Eliza, his expression thunderous. You planned this, he hissed. You and Blackwood. You've destroyed everything. No, Daniel, Eliza replied calmly. You did that yourself. You're nothing without me, Daniel spat. A trophy wife with no career, no skills, nothing but my name and my money. Good luck finding another man willing to support your pampered lifestyle. The words were designed to wound, to diminish her in front of everyone. 2 months ago, they might have succeeded. Now they merely confirmed what she already knew. The man she'd married was a stranger to her. Sebastian stepped between them. That's enough, Daniel. Security will escort you out now. He nodded to the guards, who moved to flank Daniel. "This isn't over," Daniel warned, shrugging off the guards' hands but allowing them to lead him toward the exit. Vanessa and James Reynolds were already being escorted out separately, their public shouting match having devolved into something too ugly for the refined setting. As the key players in the drama departed, the ballroom erupted in murmurs and excited conversations. The gala had just provided Manhattan's social elite with gossip fodder that would last for months. Dr. Zhang approached Eliza, concern etched on her face. "Eliza, I'm so sorry. Should we end the event early?" Eliza straightened her shoulders. "Absolutely not. We're here to raise money for children with cancer. The auction items haven't all been sold yet, and we still have the musical performance scheduled." She managed a smile. "The show must go on, Helen." Sebastian watched her with undisguised admiration. "You're remarkable," he said softly. For the first time that evening, Eliza felt something like pride warm her chest. "I learned from the best," she replied, thinking of her parents' resilience in the face of adversity. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a gala to run." As she moved through the crowd, Eliza was surprised to find people approaching her not with pity, but with respect. Women squeezed her hand in solidarity. Men who had previously only acknowledged her as Daniel's wife now engaged her in genuine conversation. By the end of the evening, the gala had raised a record $15 million, $3 million more than their goal. And Eliza Morgan had reclaimed something far more valuable than money, her sense of self. 3 months later, Eliza stood before an easel in the light-filled studio of her new Tribeca loft, brush in hand, lost in the act of creation. Classical music played softly in the background as she added touches of vermilion to the canvas, a large-scale abstract that captured the emotional turbulence and ultimate liberation of the past few months. The aftermath of the gala had been both brutal and exhilarating. As predicted, the public exposure of Daniel's infidelity had nullified the limitations in their prenup. The divorce had been finalized with remarkable speed, leaving Eliza with a substantial settlement, the Hamptons' house, and a newfound sense of purpose. Daniel hadn't fared as well. The scandal had cost him his partnership at the firm, his reputation, and most of his clients. Last Eliza heard, he'd relocated to Chicago to start over at a much smaller firm, his meteoric rise in Manhattan legal circles decisively halted. Reynolds Technology had suffered an even more dramatic fall. With the merger collapsed and questions raised about the company's business practices, their planned IPO had been postponed indefinitely. Within weeks, the stock had plummeted, and James Reynolds had been forced to consider acquisition offers at a fraction of the company's previous valuation. The winning bid had come from Blackwood Enterprises. The doorbell chimed, pulling Eliza from her reflections. Setting down her brush, she wiped her paint-stained hands on a cloth and went to answer. Sebastian stood in the hallway, a bottle of champagne in one hand and a small wrapped package in the other. "Ready to celebrate?" Eliza welcomed him in with a warm embrace. "The acquisition closed?" As of noon today, Reynolds Technology is officially part of the Blackwood portfolio. Sebastian's satisfaction was evident as he moved into the open-concept living space. "And the best part? I've installed new leadership committed to properly crediting and compensating the original developers whose work Reynolds stole." Eliza smiled. "Justice served, indeed." Sebastian handed her the package. A small gift to mark the occasion. Inside was an elegant leather-bound sketchbook with her initials embossed in gold. "For your next masterpiece," Sebastian explained. "Abigail called me yesterday, raving about your work for the gallery exhibition. She thinks you're a natural talent." Eliza felt a flush of pleasure. Her consulting role at Abigail's gallery had quickly evolved into something more substantive, a true career path that utilized both her art, history background, and her newly discovered curatorial instincts. "I've been meaning to thank you," Eliza said as they moved to the kitchen, where she retrieved glasses for the champagne. "Not just for the gala night, but for everything since. Helping me find this place, introducing me to Abigail, believing in me when I barely believed in myself." Sebastian poured the champagne, his expression turning serious. I made a promise to your father once that if anything ever happened to him and your mother, I'd look after you as if you were my own daughter. He handed her a glass. I failed to keep that promise for many years. I'm simply making up for lost time. They clinked glasses, the crystal producing a clear, pure note. There's something else we should discuss, Sebastian said after a moment. The Foundation Board has unanimously voted to offer you the position of executive director. Eliza nearly choked on her champagne. What? But I have no experience running a nonprofit. You have every relevant experience, Sebastian countered. Fundraising expertise, social connections, genuine passion for the cause, and most importantly, integrity. The Foundation needs someone like you, Eliza, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. Eliza moved to the wall of windows overlooking the city, considering the offer. The Foundation had been established after the Gala, using the funds raised to create a permanent entity dedicated to pediatric cancer research. Sebastian had been instrumental in its formation, but until now, he'd never suggested Eliza take a leadership role. Why me? She asked finally. There must be dozens of qualified candidates. Sebastian joined her at the window. Because you understand that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or social standing, but in the positive impact we have on others' lives. Because despite everything Daniel put you through, your first concern that night was still the success of the fundraiser. He paused. And because I've watched you transform from someone who defined herself through her husband's achievements to a woman standing confidently on her own. Tears pricked at Eliza's eyes. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of responsibility. You're more ready than you know, Sebastian assured her. And you wouldn't be alone. The board, myself included, would support you every step of the way. Outside, twilight was falling over the city, lights beginning to illuminate the skyline. Eliza thought about the scared, humiliated woman she'd been the night of the gala, standing frozen as her marriage shattered publicly. How far she had come since then. Okay, she said finally. I'll do it. Sebastian's face broke into a wide smile. Excellent. We'll announce it at the board meeting next week. He raised his glass again. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Eliza echoed, clinking her glass against his. After Sebastian left, Eliza returned to her painting, studying it with fresh eyes. What had begun as an expression of pain and betrayal had evolved into something more complex and ultimately hopeful, much like her own journey. Her phone chimed with a text. Expecting it to be Sebastian with some forgotten detail about the foundation, she was surprised to see Daniel's name on the screen. She hesitated before opening the message. I heard about your new position. Congratulations. You'll do well. I'm sorry for what I said that night. It wasn't true. Eliza stared at the message for a long moment. There had been a time when words of approval from Daniel would have meant everything to her. Now, they were simply words from someone whose opinion no longer defined her worth. She set the phone down without responding and turned back to her canvas. There was still work to do, colors to blend, emotions to express. Her story, her real story, was just beginning. As the last light faded from the sky outside, Eliza Morgan dipped her brush into paint the color of possibility and continued creating her masterpiece, both on canvas and in life.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.